I'm Van Sebastian here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge Season 9, Episode 44 interview. We'll be talking with Christian Baines and discussing his recent works, Book 4 in the Arcadia Trust series, Tears in Time, and a standalone that's part of a United Author project, Geist, Fleisch. Get to know our guest. Christian Baines is an awkward nerd turned slightly less awkward author. Raised on dark humor and powered by New Zealand wine, he is the author of 6 novels, including the gay paranormal series, The Arcadia Trust, and My Cat's Guide to Online Dating. Born in Australia, he now travels the world whenever possible, living and writing in Toronto, Canada between trips. Christian, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much, Vance. It's lovely to be back.
It's great to have you back. And you were here to talk about your Cat's Guide to Online Dating. How has that been received?
That's been received so well, and it's never quite what people expect.
Mm-hmm.
So I've gotten my share of confused emails and messages saying, "I really enjoyed this, but I have questions." And I'm like, that's always delightful. So I long to get people asking questions with my work. So it's been very satisfying. But having said that, that book is now nearly 2 years old. So
I know. So what have you been up to?
Well, I've had time, as you said, to do the fourth in the Arcadia Trust series, which is this one here, Tears in Time.
Woohoo!
Ooh, lovely.
Beautiful cover by my artist. And the big project for this year has been the Haunted Hearts collection, this is my contribution here. I was the first off the block. It's called Geist, Fleisch.
Nice.
And each one of these is a standalone. They are all written by own voices, queer male authors. And so those of the last of those came out just in time for Halloween. I believe that was Colin Debenham's book, but there's a whole bunch of really great books there spanning all kinds of tropes, different genres. The only real link between them is that they are all queer romantic ghost stories.
Oh,
and
nice.
permutations that takes. So
let's dive into that first. I know Halloween has just happened, but ghost stories are eternal.
They are. And I mean, ghost stories are arguably even more a Christmas thing than they are a Halloween thing. So
true. Very true.
Plus, autumn is still considered kind of the spooky, darkest part, so I think it all fits,
Yeah. So how did you get brought into the project?
I got brought into the project through a couple of author friends. JP Jackson is one of the voices spearheading the project. And he asked me if he's a fan of the Arcadia series and asked me if I wanted to be involved. Then a few other author colleagues who I know quite well were involved at the time as well. Some were with the project through to its completion, and some decided to jump in with the next collaboration we do, which I hope to have details of very shortly.
Wait, there's another one coming?
There may be another one coming. It's too early to discuss anything at the moment, but let's just say this collection has been really well received. So we're in talks at the moment, both with the existing collection of authors and others who might be interested.
Nice.
But that's how I got involved. And I will say I've never written a book this quickly in my life. I am a notoriously slow reader and not that much faster a writer. To put a book together basically within 6 months to a year, it doesn't sound like much to our romance friends, but for me, that's quite speedy. But it was really good. It was a fun challenge to do, very satisfying to come out with a book that I think is this successful this quickly. And to be part of another project that sits alongside so many good names, it's been a great experience.
Nice. All right, so since I know a little bit about it, having seen a preview copy, why Weimar Germany in the 30s?
I think the early 30s it's a key period both for gay history, particularly if you focus on Berlin and Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a key period in queer Hollywood and horror history. That this was the time when horror movies were first starting to, I'm going to start with the Hollywood side of this. It's the time when horror movies were first starting to break into the mainstream. And it was a time when none of the studios would touch them except for Universal.
Hmm.
And then Universal turned Dracula into a hit. And then Universal turned Frankenstein into a hit. And then The Invisible Man into a hit. So it was one after the other. And one of the major voices spearheading that was James Whale. Gay director, did Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, The Bride of Frankenstein. He wasn't exclusively a horror director, but he became one of the formative voices in that genre. And I've always been intrigued by not just his movies, but other aspects of his life and his broader influence on queer culture and just pop culture in general. Christopher Bram got into this in his wonderful book, Father of Frankenstein, which became the movie Gods and Monsters.
Right.
But James
One of my
Whale
favorites.
Yes, it's a fantastic film. But James Whale was also a veteran of World War One, and that kind of ties into where Geist Fleisch goes, which leads me to Weimar Berlin. Now, our understanding, our main pop culture understanding of Weimar Berlin, of course, comes from another gay author, which Christopher Isherwood, who basically just chronicled his years. Let's be honest, his slutty years in Berlin,
Right.
as best as he could. And so many gay men have gone and tried to recreate that journey since, and all luck to them. It's kind of become a bit of a rite of passage. But thank God he did, because we now have, like, in the English language, or from an English language author, a chronicle of this incredible time when you not only had incredible freedom in the nightlife and in entertainment right before everything went to hell, but also incredibly progressive work being done in terms of research into sexuality and research done into gender identity. You had Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute of Sexual Research, which operated right up until just after the Nazis came to power. They were performing successful gender reassignments, and they were running tours for the public, explaining facets of human sexuality that were still illegal, but which were tolerated in Germany, almost uniquely anywhere in the world. And because they were tolerated, they were able to German lawmakers were at least talking about, okay, what kind of recognition do we need for this? Does the law need to be changed, and so forth? And the Institute for Sexual Research, which was not the only queer rights organization operating at the time, were all key in this. So for me, it's a fascinating time in history for multiple reasons, and in Geistfleisch, they kind of intersect. Geistfleisch is a book that ties into the Arcadia Trust series, insofar as it features a number of characters from that series, although not all of them are recognizable, because we are in a very different time period. But that series deals with the familiar tropes of the universal monsters. So for me, it's kind of bringing these worlds together. And I mentioned earlier James Whale's being a World War I veteran. It also talks about World War I, because the key setting in Geistfleisch is a gay ghost bar that exists in the shadow of a lesbian bar. Now, in Berlin in the 20s and into the early 30s, there's a block of businesses on Kleiststrasse, just near the Nollendorfplatz, that became the lesbian bars of the time. And sadly, the reason they became the lesbian bars is because there was sudden demand for a thriving lesbian scene, because many men simply did not come back from World War One. But as someone who deals with, like, paranormal and occult fiction, that just got me thinking, okay, where did these men go? So that's kind of been the genesis of Geistfleisch. It's kind of, this is now in the shadow of these thriving, safe queer lesbian bars. You have this shadow world that is safe for queer men who did not come back, but who are finding in the world beyond their own ways to love and their own ways to find happiness that was denied them in life. And the main character finds a way to enter that world. Whether he should or not is another question.
Nice. So that's a lot to unpack. Did you
It
have
is a
a
lot to unpack. Yeah.
did you have a moment of inspiration where you're like, this is absolutely the story I need to tell, or was it a slow build?
I've known for a while with the Arcadia books, probably since toward the end of writing book one, that I wanted to tie it into Berlin.
Hmm.
I don't know why. It's just something about that city and about that history and about that period has always sort of tied in for me
Hmm.
in writing that series. I wasn't sure what shape that was going to take. Um, but yeah, this just felt very organic. And then when the pitch came for Haunted Hearts and says, "Oh, okay, we want a romantic ghost story
Hmm.
from everybody," I'm like, "Huh, okay, I have an idea that could be a romantic ghost story, and why don't I explore one of the characters who we don't get to see a lot of what goes on in his head and heart
Hmm.
in the Arcadia books?"
Nice.
So that's where the idea comes from.
Would you consider this a prequel, like a soft prequel to the Arcadia Trust?
Soft prequel is a good term for it, I think. You can absolutely read it as a standalone. You're not going to be left hanging. There's no cliffhangers. Um, but it does feed into and inform a lot of what the Arcadia Trust sort of shapes and becomes. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in there if you're familiar with the series.
Nice. All right. Anything else I didn't ask about it that you want folks to know?
Um, well, I think I may have covered most of it in my epic spiel to try and respond to your first question. Um, but yeah, just that the book has been it's allowed me to enter a world that is for me endlessly fascinating. It comes up tying into modern day pop culture again and again. I'm continually amazed at how this time in history has influenced not only things that I'm passionate about, but things that have shaped our broader pop culture. So it's been so much fun to enter into that world, and I hope readers have as much fun exploring it through Geist Fleisch.
And I'll tell
Nice.
you that
So it
there are several movies that are out there that you can watch amongst Gods and Monsters. There are several documentaries, and I'll include them down in our show notes with links to IMDb for those films that support this. There are several documentaries. There's one about the Club El Dorado that
Mhm.
talks about it. There's one that's narrated by, I believe it's Stephen Fry, that talks about two artists, a lesbian or a a trans woman and a gay man who did some incredible work. The gay man did not survive. He was caught and sadly was killed by the whole Nazi concentration camp thing, but he left behind a phenomenal collection of artwork that he did that is truly stunning. And I think it supports and it will give some rich tapestry texture to what Christian's been saying. So I'll be sure to include those in the show notes, and I'll make sure Vance has the link so he can put them on your page to support all the things you're talking about.
Nice.
Fabulous. And I'd add to that as well. A movie that probably inspired like the tone I went for with this book, aside from the supernatural elements, far more than Cabaret, is a BBC TV movie that was made out of Christopher and His Kind,
Yes, that's one
which
of the
was
ones
the
I'm going to
far
link
more,
down. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
fabulous, fabulous film. I think terribly underrated, possibly just because it was only a TV movie.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I find that a more interesting book than the Berlin stories because that's where Isherwood gets a little bit more personal and a little bit more autobiographical in
Right.
reflecting his experience, and you read that through the lens of the Cabaret stories, and everything kind of clicks into a special kind of place.
Right. And it's fearlessly portrayed by
Nice.
Matt Smith, who does a
It is.
phenomenal job in that movie.
And to do a shout out to the other authors in the Haunted Heart series, they're not all ghost stories. Some of them are werewolf. There's a vampire one, if I remember correctly.
There are,
Go ahead, let's give the shout out to the other authors.
yeah, there's quite a wide variety and a wide variety of interpretations of what a ghost story is within Haunted Hearts, which has been great. There is a vampire story in there. There is a werewolf story. There's quite a number of clairvoyance. There's a witch wizard story set in Chicago, which is quite wonderful. So yeah, there's no two stories are alike. So we
Nice.
have everything ranging from quite high concept stories to good old fashioned jock erotica. There's a little bit of everything in there.
Nice. All right. Moving on to your Arcadia Trust, book four, Tears in Time. What do people need to know about the series to pick up book four?
Okay, full disclosure, I would not probably suggest jumping in at book four,
Fair.
because here's the thing. I'll now hold it up here again.
Mhm.
This is the book where the sins of the past catch up with everybody. So everything that has happened in the first three books is kind of coming to a head in this one. The premise of it is that the main character who's a bloodshade or a vampire, as he's known more commonly, has rescued his werewolf lover from this kind of parallel reality and brought him back to the safety of home. And that is where we left off at book three. Now, as book four unfolds, they're finding out the world is not quite the way they left it. And many people that they have come to rely on and trust, or anyone they've known at all, and places they've known, can't be found or have changed in some way, or businesses have closed or something like that.
So it's broken
So
reality in some way.
it's a bit of a broken reality story, and then it sort of blends into, okay, what has broken this reality, and what does it have to do with us? Why does this feel so personal to us? And there is a connection with there is more Shaper goings on. So Shapers are kind of the wizards and witches of this universe. Clearly something is going on there as well, which our heroes are on the periphery of. But yeah, it's a difficult book to describe, I think, because it gets into some sort of surreal aspects that make a lot of sense if you're familiar with the story up to this point. But ultimately, in book three, I introduced a new character who's kind of a second love interest for the protagonist. And in this book, the three of them come together in a way that is, as is normal with the series, definitely not easy. It's definitely going to challenge and change all three of them in some ways. And the ending is not that easy either. But feedback I've had from readers is they've absolutely loved this installment. It's definitely paid off a lot of plots and a lot of seeding from the previous books in the series. And I've even had some people jump in at book four. This is the first one they've read, and they've proven me wrong. They've said, no, I could follow along with what was going on. I had enough of a summary of why this has been set up and what these characters have done in the past. So who knows? But personally, I mean, of course, I'm a fan of reading books in order, and that's for me for any series, my own or anyone else's. But yeah, so it's been exciting to continue that story and kind of delve into the characters in a bit more of a personal character development kind of way.
Nice. You said a lot of plots were tied up. Is this a culmination story, or will there be more?
There is going to be one more.
Okay.
One more. So this is the story that kind of has united everyone together after things have kind of been after the mirror has kind of been shattered. And the next book, when it arrives, is going to be kind of that sprint to the finish.
Okay. All right. Oh, I don't want to ask spoiler questions. Let's ask it this way. You've got the Bloodshades, so the vampires, the Shapers, the magic folk,
Yes,
and werewolves. They all work well together. I'm trying to build a universe for people who haven't yet stepped into the Arcadia Trust.
absolutely not. So, okay.
Who would read that happy story?
Sorry?
I said,
Who would read that happy story?
Who would read that happy story?
I'm sure, that's not some great undiscovered trope that's just waiting. I'm sure somebody has written it where all those supernatural creatures are one big happy family, but maybe only as a parody, something like the setup to One Division, where your audience is sitting there going, there's something terribly wrong here. But no, in the Arcadia Trust universe, everything is broadly broken down into, the supernatural creatures, broadly they're broken down to two key organizations. One is the House of Magic, which is all of the creatures that are beyond, that have supernatural abilities, but are still grounded in mortality. They're born, they age, they develop powers, they die. So that is things like wizards, witches, werewolves, cloakwalkers, who are folks who turn invisible when they hit at a certain age. Anything like that. On the other side, you have the House of Blood, which are the creatures that have been touched by immortality. So that is creatures that don't age, like the vampires, or you have creatures who are the returned dead, or you have the creatures who have been abducted by the Fae and returned as kind of changeling folk, who are called the Mutilated. They will play a bigger role in the fifth installment of the series and the close of it. And that's all I'm going to really discuss about that story. But yeah, there's definitely a share of politics, and the organizations that you think are willing to be more morally shady are never the ones who are actually going to be willing to go there. So I like just playing and subverting people's expectations. I don't really like clear outlines of good or evil, particularly when I'm dealing with characters and creatures like this. So everyone kind of has their own agenda, and
as we all do.
The soup of the story is how they all what happens and how characters relate when these different agendas interact.
Nice. All right. Anything else you want folks to know?
So Tears in Time, again, it's set in Sydney, Australia. But it could be the last we see of the Sydney setting for the Arcadia Trust. So the next one is going to open things up a little bit. As to where a few people have asked me, where should they read Geist Fleisch in relation to the Arcadia series? My answer to that is you could really read it anywhere in relation to the series. You could read it to begin with. I would probably recommend reading at least the first Arcadia book, but not necessarily. You could read it as a standalone, and it'll give you a different experience according to when you slot it in there.
Nice. Yeah, the Easter eggs will make more sense if you wait a bit.
They will, but you'll also, I can imagine reading Geistfleisch first, and then having things come up in the Arcadia Trust. You go, that's that person, or that's how that leads to that, and not all the questions are answered. So it sort of gives readers room to kind of shape their own understanding of the world, which is fun as well.
Nice. Are you curious what Wrote Podcast is all about? Wrote stands for Written on the Edge, and we are here to bring you weekly discussions about LGBTQ storytelling. That's right, all genres, all mediums, wide open. So our guests will share personal accounts of living their artistic lives, their personal experiences writing, crafting, stories, music, filmmaking, all of it. But what we like to do is explore the edges of what's accepted and where storytelling should be headed. All right, are you ready for our get to know you questions?
Absolutely.
Take it away, Baz.
All right. I promise, as always, to be very, very gentle. All right. So in this year of diving deeper, what is your favorite writing snack or drink?
Oh, I mean, clearly New Zealand wine. No,
okay.
No, that's not one. It's too late for one. That was like at 6 a.m. No. I don't know if I have a specific favorite snack or drink.
This has become mine.
Oh, that's fair. That's absolutely fair.
I figure if you're writing about the rainbow, eat the rainbow.
Yeah.
I don't do it all. I mean, it's just every now and then I'll pop one in to give myself a little boost. But
have that sugar hit speed your NaNoWriMo along.
Right. Well, there you go.
Not that we do NaNoWriMo anymore.
Yeah, I know.
bullshit container.
Another thing that we, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll just leave that and put that down and step back.
I will give the AI explosion this. It's made our lives so much more simple. There's so much less to keep track of now in terms of companies and programs and things like that. So it's been good for weeding out the trash.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Anyway,
well, what books did you read growing up?
What did I read growing up? I think we talked about this before, but I'll go over it again. And I was denied, or my parents were not au fait with anything that was occultish growing up. So there was no horror, no high fantasy, or anything like that. And that, of course, made that side of things completely irresistible. But I will say that they did encourage me to seek out like classic Gothic horror stories in a way.
Okay.
So that kind of sowed the seed. They didn't see that as problematic at all. So I got a good grounding in like all of the basic tropes long before I started writing. I read quite a bit of science fiction. As a kid, I read quite a few like sort of IP tie-in books. So, things that were tied into Star Trek or Clue or whatever else. So this is, we're talking about like 11, 12 years old. That's the kind of stuff I was reading. So yeah, but I really, I don't know. I was willing to sort of take in anything at that point, but not a lot of queer content. Sadly, I didn't discover that until I was a little bit older.
Okay. All right. Well, who's been the biggest supporter of your writing?
Who's been a big support? Oh God, this list is long. I know you're supposed to say like your spouse or your mother or something.
So look forward to part 2 of our interview with Christine.
I thought that was just my first answer.
Right.
That's your 6-part Netflix special.
Right.
No. Okay. People I will single out. I would say I moved from Sydney to Toronto about 12 years ago. And I want to shout out my friends from Sydney, either from that time or who I have made since. Every time I have gone back, they have shown up for me. They have supported my events. They've been, cross promoting me, keeping me up to date with what's going on in terms of like Australian events and things like that. There's one Glow next year in Brisbane that I'm hoping to go back for. It's a very good friend of mine who's a named Beena Bhattacharya. She is a Indian-Australian filmmaker who's been incredibly supportive of my writing. And I've had the privilege of watching her kind of grow as a screenwriter and a director. And she's just finished her first feature film. So giving her a quick shout out there.
Nice.
But yeah, no, there's been so many people who've all played their part supporting and championing my writing both within the writing community and outside. So that's been really really exciting and so important to have.
Excellent. All right. Well, are you a morning person or a night owl?
Tend to be more of a night owl. I notice this is changing as I get older, which is really odd. I find if I'm awake way too early in the morning, and I just got back from a trip on Sunday, so that's been a lot of this week. I don't like to waste the time. Like there's something about if I wake up at 5 a.m., there's a part of my brain that just doesn't want to go back to sleep. I'm like, okay, I've got an extra couple of hours to play with. What am I going to do with this? So that's been.
I will tell you that only increases as you get older. Now that I've hit my sixth decade, what's time?
I hear that. I mean, as you get older, I'm told that your body clock just gets
It
just moved
just
earlier
goes
and
out
earlier in the
the
day.
window. I mean, you're just sitting there like, I'm sitting there with my husband, and I said something about it because he was like, "Oh, I'm feeling a little tired." I'm like, "Well, take a nap. It's not like we have to be anywhere." I mean,
Yeah, but
so what's time?
Baz,
I
how
get
would you
up
know?
if
What
my
are you,
brain goes
38?
off and I'm sleeping. I'll get up, and if I want to write, I'll write. you know.
How would you know though? What are you, 38?
Oh yeah. You're my new best friend.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, what's your favorite hobby outside of writing?
My favorite hobby outside of writing. I'd say it's still film. I see a lot. I see a lot of movies. Or try and see as much as I can. I haven't been seeing as much as I used to since COVID. Uh, I don't know. There's been a change in the flavor and tone of movies since then. But still looking for anything that sort of grabs my imagination.
I found I'm getting past the blockbuster phase. I'm really kind of done with like big, explosive, in your face. I'm done. I'm done. Just give me good stories. I mean, with well acted, well executed, nicely produced, wonderfully thought out stories. That's what I want. I'm just done with the big budget brouhaha.
Yeah, I think so. I think everyone is. I think there's been a certain downturn in interest of that. I saw an article earlier this week. Is horror fatigue starting to set in? Because horror films that they've been the one bankable genre that hasn't really gone away in the last 5 years. And I don't know if horror fatigue is starting to set in. It may be just that they're the last genre standing right now because they're the only one that can reliably turn a profit, whether even if the film is not that much of a hit, it doesn't need to be a big hit. Um,
Plus, I think even horror can be, it'll, the thing with horror, and I would even extend this into science fiction a bit if you don't get caught up in the technobabble stuff, but horror, I think, allows you to tell a very, very intimate story as well that doesn't have to be big and all encompassing, but can be extremely powerful because of the scalpel that is used by the writers and the creators to really hone in on a character's horrific set of events that they're faced with. So I think the probably one of the reasons why horror has withstood the test of time. One, we all love a good scare or a good creep out, kind of thing. But at the same time, I think horror allows you that space to be either very grand and big, vampires everywhere, or you get down to these very, very scary, but into the minutia, into the weeds kind of stories that can be really, really impactful. So, I think that that's probably why horror has lasted as long as it has.
I'd agree with that. And I think that the more intimate you get, the more unsettling and horrifying it can
Right,
be.
right, right. Even to the
The
point
more
where
personal it
mundane
feels.
becomes scary. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? That's truly terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Well, has writing and publishing books changed the way you see yourself?
I mean, the way I see myself has definitely changed over the years. I would say if it has changed me, I think it's the fact that getting books done and getting books out there and having people respond to them, positively or negatively, that does change the way you see yourself
Right.
in a positive way. If you, I think if you are, I don't want to sound pretentious, but if you have it in you to tell stories, and you know from a very early age this is who you are and this is what you want to do, even if you pursue a career doing something else, but you have that in you to tell stories as a writer, as an actor, or as anything like that. Once you put that out there, and you start getting a response and a conversation starts happening, that kind of reinforces that part of who you were
Mm-hmm.
as a kid and that part of your identity, uh, that is very, very vulnerable and very, very easy to shut down when you're young. So yeah, I think that writing and publishing has reinforced that for me in a very positive way.
Excellent. I love that answer. All
Mhm.
right. Well, if you were to write a spin-off about a side character, which would you choose? all of your children lean in.
Mm-hmm. Shush, Grace. You got your story. Um, Funny you ask. The ghosts in Geist Fleisch. A little bit more about the story. The ghosts in question are a group of 5 queer German soldiers from the First World War. And the more I was writing them, the more I started developing their personalities. So I have 5 very distinct ghosts and 5 very distinct personalities. And as I got to the end of Geistfleisch, and people started to be a little bit question, okay, what's going on with the ghosts? What happens in all this? I don't want to spoil the book, but what in all this time between this and the Arcadia series, for instance. So I hadn't planned to go here, but I did also start thinking that's a really good question. So we will see.
Okay. All right.
Nice.
Fair enough. Have you ever traveled as research for a book?
I wouldn't say I've specifically traveled as research for a book, but places that I've traveled to and loved and gone back to repeatedly have definitely shaped my books. New Orleans is one, Berlin is another. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's kind of the way a place speaks to you, or the way a place speaks to me, if it kind of shares a story with me or not.
Lovely. Okay. And finally, how do you celebrate when you finish a book?
Normally, it's a pretty low-key sort of celebration. Usually, I like to do this when I finish a first draft, even if I know the first draft isn't very good and this is just the start of the work. Normally, I just that night will crack a bottle of wine, prep or order a nice dinner, and that'll be kind of it. And then I will take like a few days off of just not looking at the thing, and then I can come back to it fresh and then, as the man would say, the real work begins.
Right.
Yep.
The machete comes out.
That's right. So, I'm sorry, children.
Nice.
All right. Well, you made it through the list. Bravo.
Mm-hmm. So, what have you got next?
What have I got next?
Pick a card, any card.
Yeah.
What am I working on right now? Right now, I'm putting on notes, putting together notes for another standalone story. It's one I've had kicking around in my head for a while, and it's going to be a horror story. In the more straight ahead, like actually terrifying sense. I am still hashing out exact plot details for it, but I'm hoping to have it out within a year.
Nice.
So yeah, I'll definitely be spruiking that to the rooftops when I have something to share. But at the moment, yeah, I just kind of gotten Geistfleisch out over the finish line. I'm also hoping next year to start dipping my toes into translations and possibly an audiobook or two. So we'll see.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean it's something that people have been asking for a little while, and just the economics of it hasn't worked out for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm hoping that 2025, for all the downs that seem imminent, might include some positives in that direction.
Nice.
But I've heard that doing authors are starting to do like Patreons and Kickstarters and stuff for if they really want to have an audiobook or whatever, say, hey, look, this is what production costs come from. So if you're really looking forward to it, maybe you want to throw a few bucks into the pot, and here's what I'll give you on the side of it, or whatever. So I've heard that has been a thing for some authors, and it has worked out in their favor. So something to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And as traditional publishing kind of crumbles in on itself,
what was that?
All those things are a possibility.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right. Any final words of wisdom?
Wisdom.
At this hour?
I don't know. Ask the cat.
Yeah!
You're not likely to get.
I was hoping it was going to
I'm
make
not
an
likely to get
appearance.
wisdom from Grace Jones, I think.
I was
Awesome.
hoping they were going to make an appearance.
Oh, she's the book may be 2 years old, but she's always going to be here. I don't know. I would just keep writing. Keep if that is your thing, keep reading. If it's not, please. I do hope that we have more readers than writers, but I will quote another author, J.M. Redman, who writes these fabulous lesbian mysteries through Bold Strokes Books, who said that let's write more queer books than they can possibly ban.
Yes, that part.
Bravo.
And
that part.
I think that maybe, I don't know if art can sort of change the world, but it can certainly. You win these things through being the bigger force, right? That is just how a democracy works, for better or for worse. So you do need to be vocal. You do need to be relatable and open, and put things out there that people need and people want right now.
Right. And I would just say also in our community, probably support each other. Do what you can. Vote with your dollars. Money talks, bullshit walks. So, just vote with your dollars, support queer artists, queer content creators. You see them on YouTube, give them an automatic subscribe. Even if you don't watch all of their stuff, the subscriptions help those content creators. And especially in this climate in the world where authoritarianism is kind of moving around the globe, I think it's important that we all kind of do our part to keep our brothers, sisters, and NBs up above the fray and do what we can to support them. So yeah, I totally agree with you there.
Absolutely. All those little ways of supporting and not tearing each other down from because of minutia. Because right now we can't afford it.
Right.
Absolutely. Don't waste my time. They're called microaggressions for a reason.
Right. Leave the reeds and the shades for the people against us.
Yeah. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, well, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Christian Baines for coming back and talking to us. Christian, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. It's always a pleasure to be here, and so great to be back.
Yeah, we miss you when you're gone.
Yeah. All right, folks, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. The show was produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.ropepodcast.com. We are new on Blue Sky at Rope Podcast. Come find us. We're going to start talking there. And tune in next week for your queer media fix.
What's that? Closing time. Bum's Rush and Melody, dear.